check 1 2 1 2. Can anybody hear me? Okay, I'm gonna check the volume on this. Should be good. Okay, mic check 1 2. Can y'all hear me? I'm trying to share this with everybody in the live Discord chats and see if anybody shows up. Buffering, I knew that was going to happen. Alrighty. You say we got Christine Baker. What's up? How you doing? I figure I'd do some live reading today. Hi, Mom. How are you? What's up? I hope you're doing good tonight. Let me turn on some light. I have this book called Gothic Fantasy, Chilling Horror Short Stories. Hey, Josie. How are you doing? Thanks for coming out. But yeah, I was just pretty much saying that this is a book that I got from, I think I got it from either Books A Million or Barnes & Noble, which, whatever bookstore was there, but, this book is pretty much a hodgepodge of short stories written by the best authors, such as H.P. Lovecraft, Edgar Allan Poe, Mary Shelley, Nathaniel Hawthorne, William Hope Hodgson, and more. And I think I saw Leonard Barton, what's up? Swedish Bond says, I'm good this morning. Oh, well, I'm glad you're having a good morning. Concurrent viewers 1, and I'm only seeing 1 2 3 4 viewers. I'm doing great. I'm doing great, actually, Mommy. Called you Mommy. I just need to share this to one more platform, which would be Instagram, if anybody will want to come out. Hey, 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 come out and play. Do 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 do. It should be good enough to. And let's make this black. Yeah. No, I need some new color that's easy to read. I'll go with blue. Share story on Instagram. Yeah. Josie says, I was hoping someone would live stream tonight. Aw. Well, I'm glad I could be of service. I will keep my phone on so that way I can watch the chat while I read to you, or at least attempt to read to you, because it's been a long time since I've did live reading. I mean, the last time I did live reading was with Cage Misery, and I only got 3 likes so far, and only 5 watching. Shit. Okay. And mind you, I'm going into this book blind, so you're going to have to bear with me. Was I wrong about your curly hair? Oh, whose curly hair are you talking about? Gotta check a message real quick. And, oh, poor Millie Dukes. Mine? I don't have curly hair. I don't know where you get that idea, Mom, but alright. Like I said, I'm going into this book blind. So I'm sorry if I'm watching a lot of shit. So PA Nightmare, what's up? Okay, I don't know those words to say by 5. I think it's Etiquus. Eck.
Ectasis. Ectasis.
Okay, Ectasis. Who has nice hair, Josie? I don't remember showing anybody my hair. Oh yeah, that's right. I think I posted something on Instagram about my hair. Whatever. Not much. I figured stop by and say hi. Well, hello. Well, I'm about to do a little live reading. So, the first story I'm going to read is from, once again, the book called Chilling Horror Short Stories, Gothic Fantasies. A book forwarded by Dr. Dale Townshend. And hopefully these are legal enough, because these books are like over 40 years old. These stories are like over 40 years old, especially if you have Edgar Allan Poe, Shelley, and Lovecraft in here. So, with that said, let us begin. Ectasis by Rebecca J. Allred. And you're going to have to forgive me. I am a little rusty. You see parts of me on my IG stories. So that means you probably see my fat ass. But all joking aside, but let's begin. The waiting room is empty, but it isn't quiet. Behind the door marked private, a woman chokes out wet, anguished sobs. Dr. Allison's secret secretary pretends not to notice. She greets me with a practiced, professional smile that lacks even a hint of warmth, and asks me to wait. Wait? For what? I'm the last patient of the week. Always have been. Always will be. It's not like there's a line. I smile, nod. Sure, I'll wait. The secretary punches a few buttons, clicks the mouse once, twice, drags something across the screen, double clicks, and resumes typing. Once I arrived early and caught her snooping through patient files. I could have turned her in. HIPAA violates all HIPAA violations are serious business, but frankly, I don't care, and even if I did, who'd believe a paranoid nutbag like me? The secretary finishes checking her email, or whatever's so important she can check me in immediately, and asks for my name. She knows my name, but I give it to her anyway. She asked me to confirm my address. It hasn't changed since last week. Neither has my insurance. When she's done checking all the little boxes, I take a seat on a cream-colored sofa. The room smells like those little bars of soap shaped like seashells. And in an instrumental version of a song I almost recognize wafts from speakers I can't see. There is a coffee table made of black wood. Resting on its surface is a little Zen garden and the latest issue of half a dozen tabloid magazines. Behind the door, the crying has stopped. My palms itch. I scratch them with nails jagged from daily dental manicures. They are barely long enough to register any measure of relief. One of my fingertips slides over a pair of fine, almost invisible hairs. Well, thanks for stopping by, Mom. Hope you have a good morning. Where was I? Oh, yes. In middle school. In middle school, the kids said if you masturbated too much, you'll get hairy palms. Pfft, I don't masturbate, and the hairs of my palms aren't really hairs. Delusional parasitosis. I can't pronounce it the rest of my life. Sorry. Eponymolacy. Delusional parasitosis. Fuck. I bought this book just to get a challenge. But, yeah. Parasitosis. Delusional parasitosis. Eponymosely known as Ickbom's syndrome. I read that in one of Dad's medical texts back when I wanted to be a doctor too. Is a medical name for my particular brand of nutbaggery, or would be if the bugs infesting my body were all in my head like Dr. Allison says. They are in my head. I can feel their antennae quiver as they poke through the skin on my face, masquerading as a beard. But there are other places too. I look back to Dr. Allison's secretary. She's working on the computer again, getting ready to go home for a long weekend. Mentally, she's already gone, and so she doesn't see me pinch the hairs, pluck the beetle from my palm, and toss it into the Zen garden on the table. It lands on its back, legs combing the air a few moments before it rights itself and burrows beneath the sand. The door to Dr. Alice's office opens. A short woman with puffy eyes and dark hair pulled back into a tight ponytail exits. Her son is dead, just like my mom. I know, because Dr. Allison's secretary isn't the only one who has been snooping in patient files. Lately, I've been thinking about this woman. Every week, I think about stopping her as she passes me in the soap-scented waiting room, wrapping her in my arms and allowing sorrow to flow freely between our wounded souls. We would share everything. She and I would be made whole again. The woman's eyes never leave the floor as she moves across the room, her shoes whispering against the high-quality beige carpets and carrying across the room. And carrying her out of the building. Dr. Allison lingers in the frame of the door marked private. She invites me inside. I'm going to take a quick break. We're such a good... There we go. I hope everybody's doing good tonight. Alrighty. Now, where was I? Dr. Allison isn't my first shrink, and she won't be my last. My first therapist was Dr. Carlson. He went to medical school with my dad. I went to see him when the bugs first showed up. Back then, they didn't call it delusional parasitosis. Oh, there we go. I think I pronounced it correctly. They didn't call it delusional parasitosis. I know because Dad has copies of all my medical records up until age 18 in a locked drawer in his office. They sit right on top of Mama's. Dr. Carlson was cool. He had red hair and a beard and smoked cigars. Not during our sessions, but always when he came over to drink wine and talk shop with Dad. I'm saying that with quotation marks. He told me the bugs were all in my head too. But that it wasn't my fault because Mama had put them there. They were contagious, like the chicken pox. So Mama had to go to the hospital for a while. When Mama went away, so did the bugs. Folie à deux is French for a madness shared by two. Oh fuck, I mispronounced that. Folie à deux is French for a madness shared by two. The medical term shared psychotic disorder. That's what's written in my clinic notes from Dr. Carlson. Dr. Allison's office doesn't smell like soap. It smells like lavender. Fun fact, I'm allergic to lavender. And tears. There is no music in here. Only the soft, predictable tick of the clock, counting down the minutes with malign diligence. The walls are lined with bookshelves, neatly organized. A desk with a computer of a stack of folders, patient files, and a fountain pen, and a lead crystal paperweight is nested in the corner. Near the center of the room are a high-back leather chair and couch. She sits in the chair and gestures to the couch. Usually I lie down. Today I sit. Pardon me. Today I sit. She comments on my beard, says she likes it. Pfft, she's lying. And then she asks how the last week has been. I tell her my roommate is mad at me because he thinks I killed his cat. She asked if I did, and I tell her I didn't. I'm lying. Sort of. And she asks how that makes me feel. I tell her I feel itchy. The last time I saw Mama alive, she was lying in an expensive hospital bed. The bugs haven't bothered me in months. Ugh. The bugs haven't bothered me in months, and both Dad and Dr. Carlson thought it would be okay for me to visit. She looked different. Not like Beaumont at all. Her soft yellow hair had been cut short. Dad said it was because she's been pulling it out. The medical word for this the medical word for this is trichotillomania. Trichotillomania. There were little red sores all over her face and scalp, and she wore mittens that she couldn't take off. Mama just laid there, ignoring both me and my dad, murmuring over and over again that she was hungry. I begged Dad to get her something to eat. He patted me on the head and told me I was a good boy, and asked me to keep Mama company while he stepped out to get some graham crackers. Sounds good. As soon as he was gone, Mama popped out of bed like some lunatic, termite-infested jack-in-the-box. She told me that the bugs were hungry, that if she didn't feed them soon, they would eat her instead. Tears well up inside her eyes. Tiny black specks swarmed in them. Mama kissed me on the forehead. And I felt something crawl out of her lips and onto my scalp. I pulled back, running my hands through my hair, trying to dislodge the invader. When I looked back at Mama, she was standing very still, arms outstretched, staring at the ceiling. Her mouth was open wide, and a torrent of black vomit. Not vomit. Vomit doesn't writhe. Spewed from it. I screamed and screamed and screamed. Dr. Allison asked if the new pills had been helping. At first I don't answer. I'm staring at the floor. One of the bugs had escaped. It's me. It's meandering across the nylon weave. Formication is a medical term for the sensation of insects crawling in or under the skin. But it's the itching that really bothers me. The medical term for this is pruritus. Pruritus. She asked me again if the pills are helping. I answer in the affirmative. Dr. Allison follows my gaze, asks what I'm looking at. I change the subject. The last time I saw Mama, she was lying in an expensive wooden box. Her hair was long and soft again, a wig, and makeup covered most of the holes in her skin. Neither, however, could disguise how hollow she was. Dad said she'd gotten so skinny because she stopped eating. The medical term for this is anorexia, but I knew better. She hadn't stopped eating. She's been eaten. She's been eaten. During the service, a procession of tiny insects flied out of the casket and onto the wooden floor. They looked like ants, but they weren't. These were smaller, harder, meaner. They formed a quivering semicircle around the coffin. Their soft hum was a nearly inaudible requiem. I pulled my feet up onto the pew and cried. Dr. Allison is scribbling furiously at her yellow Lego pad. I never spoke about my mother before. The funeral was bad, but nowhere near as bad as what happened that night. I was dreaming about Casey Nelson. In real life, she was a redhead, but in my dream, she had yellow hair like my mom, and her face was round and healthy, free from blemishes. Her eyes were lined by thick velvet lashes, and they glittered like geodes. I almost said Geodude. No Pokemon here. Casey smiled as her lip whispered permission. I reached out and touched her, and she did the same. But where my hand closed around soft, palatable tissue, hers gripped flesh, turned nearly to stone. I moaned and felt my crotch moistened. Ooh, this is getting lewd. Casey looked at me, but she wasn't smiling anymore, and her eyes had lost their mischievous sparkle. She released her grip and raised her hand to eye level. It turned black. I shrank back to revulsion, only to realize it wasn't just her hand. My groin was black too. Necrosis is the medical term for premature tissue death. At first I didn't think there could be anything worse than a lapful of necrotic penis, but as I reached a trembling hand down to examine my discolored genitals, I realized I was wrong. The stain didn't just cover my withering erection. It was coming from inside. and it was spreading. Little bulbs of darkness separated from the primary mass, budding. Discord's going apeshit. Budding off like spores. They sprouted legs and antennae, and I woke up, horrified to discover it wasn't a dream. The bugs were everywhere, clinging to my sheets, swarming over my thighs, marching up my belly, toward my face, and my silent, gaping mouth. Damn it, I lost my place. Okay. I tumbled out of bed, knocking the lamp off the nightstand, and it clattered loudly, but did not break. A few seconds later, the hallway light blinked on, and heavy, rapid footsteps climbed the stairs. The light worked. The light worked the insects. The light worked the incense. The light worked the insects into a frenzy. Desperate to get back inside, they filled my eyes, my ears, my nose. I gagged and choked as they fled down my throat. That's how my dad found me, withering on the floor, choking on my own nocturnal issue. I tell Dr. Allison that's my fault. That Mama is dead because I couldn't help her. My beard quivers and I tug at it, dislodging a handful of beetles in the process. Dr. Allison asks what I think I could have done to help Mama. She doesn't notice the insects tumbling from my fingers and scurrying toward her. I explain that the infestation is too much for a single person to accommodate. Mama hadn't been trying to kill me that day in the hospital, as I thought at that time. We shared the burden before, and she desperately needed to share it again. But I hadn't been too afraid. I hadn't understood. She tells me that this is a major breakthrough, that the insects are just a representation of suppressed guilt, that all I have to do is learn to accept that I am blameless in my mother's death, and the bugs will go away. The itch is almost unbearable now. After that night, Dad and I didn't talk much. He assured me that what had happened was just a normal part of growing up, and that Mama's death was responsible for transforming a normal, run-of-the-mill wet dream, the medical term is nocturnal emission, into a nightmare I had experienced. Whether I tried to broach the subject of my affliction, Dad would just turn away and tell me to discuss it with Dr. Carlson, then Dr. Levitt, then Dr. Kottner. He was incapable of sharing the burden of my illness any further than financing its treatment. If he suspected anything, then the Girl Scout disappeared while selling cookies on our block. He never understood a word. Maybe it's because that things got better, a lot better, for a while. After nearly a decade of doctors and drugs, I stopped scratching and started sleeping again. That was the stretch where both Dad and I thought I was well enough to pursue a career in medicine after all. I moved out, enrolled in pre-med classes, and even took the medcat the MCAT. Scored damn well too. I was out celebrating with some classmates who had also scored well when I felt the twinge. I always got a little anxious when something itched. I couldn't help it. It was the conditioned. It was the conditioned response, but this was different. The tickle between my left index finger and thumb wasn't the usual per, pru, pruritive. You said you would challenge yourself, Outcast. Was it the usual pruriceptive itch? That's the medical term for an itch originating in the skin. I've learned to accept that as a part of normal human psychology. Physiology. There we go. It was deeper, and as the weeks passed, it grew in both distribution and intensity. I tell Dr. Allison that Mama's isn't the only death I'm responsible for, and she frowns. The excitement of our breakthrough melting from her face. I tell her I lied about my roommate's cat, that it had been an experiment because I felt so badly about the homeless woman and the Girl Scout, especially since she'd been an accident. I stand and pull my shirt over my head, revealing constellations of angry red sores. I scratched at them, and Dr. Allison asked me to please return to my seat. Her face is calm, but her eyes were broadcasting an SOS in an empty ocean. She knows her secretary has gone home. There is nobody here to help her. I am the last patient of the week. Always have been. Always will be. It was my dad's birthday, and he invited me over for dinner. He'd been pressuring me about medical school applications, and that night I finally mustered the courage to tell him what I'd known for the better part of the semester. That no matter what my MCAT scores had been, or how outstanding my letters of recommendations were, I would not be attending medical school for the following fall. The only explanation necessary was for me to roll up my sleeves. There we go. Was to roll up my sleeves. When Dad saw those old familiar craters, his face became an amalgam. Amalgam. His face became an amalgam of disappointment and rage, and we spent the rest of the evening in silence. I thought he might never speak to me again, but as I was leaving, he told me to expect a call from Dr. Allison's office the following day. Cruising past City Park on my way home, the itch flared so intensely that I couldn't resist the need to rub my shrieking eyeballs. If there had been anyone else on the road, I had caused an accident for sure. I piloted the vehicle into 3 parking spaces and rubbed and scratched until my eyelids were swollen and my cheeks were soaked with tears. I opened the door and tumbled out of the car. The cool autumn air acted as acted as a salve against my hot, prickling skin, and it chased away the rank aroma of failure that had shrouded me since realizing a normal life was forever beyond my reach. I didn't dare get back in my car, so I walked, following the cement perimeter about half a mile away, about half a mile before the itch flared again. I never entered the park after dark before, but the insanity burning just beneath my skin compelled me to abandon the sidewalk and ventured into the wooded area. The pricking discomfort dulled, but did not abate. As I trudged deeper into the park, at the center was a playground. A pair of swings twirled lazily into a gentle breeze. Shit. Itchy, itchy, itchy. Damn, this story's making me itch. Shit. Inviting me to sample the careless freedom of childhood. As I approached, a shape broke free from the shadows. I froze, fearful of what it might be, what it might want. But it was just a homeless woman. She asked if I had any spare change. I didn't. If I had, I have given it to her. Not because of some altruistic impulse, but because, as soon as she spoke, my skin ignited once again, and I knew if I didn't put some distance between us, it would be the end. I told her I wasn't carrying any cash. No, not even a few cents for a cup of coffee. And brushed past her. My interest in the swings gone. My interest in the swings gone. Her next proposition stopped me in my tracks. She offered to blow me. The medical term for this is well, fuck it, I'm just gonna say it, fellatio. In all my years, I never had a girlfriend. Had not so much as kissed a girl, or a guy for that matter, opting instead to avoid any and all forms of sexual stimulation as they might spell death. If not for me, then for the object of my desire. The only desire within me at that moment was to relieve that horrible itch. Despite the disgust, I knew if it wasn't now, it would be later, and I really did feel badly about this Girl Scout. I even kept one of her missing posters foiled between the pages of my dad's old diagnostic and statical manual next to a copy of Mama's death certificate. With the flavor of bile creeping up my throat, I turned to face the woman and accepted. This boy. I explained to Dr. Allison that what I really needed is somebody to share this burden with me. Someone who understands my pain. A kindred spirit. A mother. I'm crying. Choked sobs of anguish and pain drowning out the indifferent tick of the clock. They're pouring out of me now. Black perspiration, streaming from my pores, infested tears squeezing from my eyes. Dr. Allison screams and leaps from her seat, swatting away the first troops of the oncoming anthropod assault. She dives for the alarm switch under her desk. I snatch the paperweight and swing, striking her in the temple. There is a sound like hard-boiled egg rolling over a over a granite countertop, and Dr. Allison crumbles to the ground. The bugs on the carpet race towards her and disappeared onto an expanding pool of blood. I remove the remainder of my clothing and move over Dr. Allison's unconscious form. I tell her I'm sorry. Call her Mama. The words materialize without a conscious thought. And then I descend. The swarm erupted, tearing through my skin, rising from my body like smoke above a raging fire. Sweat, sweet, blessed relief. I call this cycle of agony. Oh, fuck. I call this cycle of agony and release. Ah, shit, I forgot. I forgot the title of the name. And release Exodus. This, however, is not a medical term, but an entomological one. There is no medical term for what I am. When it's over, I flick through the stack of files on Dr. Allison's desk, searching until I find the one that belongs to the dark-haired woman with the dead son. All I need is the first page, the intake form. The intake form with her name, address, and phone number. I wipe the tears from my face and get dressed before taking one last look of the half-consumed pile of flesh that used to be my therapist. The sores on my skin are gone now, replaced by raw, healthy tissue, but the insects tumble over Dr. Allison like grains of black sand, humming, burrowing, feeding. By morning there will be nothing left. My stomach churns and I think I'll never eat again. Though I know from experience this isn't true. I didn't want to hurt her, but Dr. Allison was no different than the Girl Scout, or the homeless woman, or my roommate's poor, stupid cat. All fit for consumption, but not for habitation. Despite her best efforts, she never could have helped me. As I turned to leave, I glanced down at the photograph of the bottom corner of the intake sheet, clutched in my left hand, and hoped for both our sakes that next time will be different. Whew. Okay, I gotta look that word up again. Had it right the first time, but I botched it the second time. Shit. Anyways, let's take a look at the chat. Aw, Mia, hi. How you doing? What's up? Let's see here. Oh, Leonard Barton. I think I'm going to bed. I'm not thinking straight. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, thank you for coming, Leonard. Or Harry. But yeah, that was the. But that was. Damn it. Let's see here. I'm sleepy. Was worn out after today's show, but it was so much fun. Oh yeah, I forgot that. Y'all had a call it horror honeys today. I'm sorry I didn't show up. Eh, I usually show up to you, ladies, but I was just not feeling it today. So
Ectasis.
Ectasis, there we go. And that was Ectasis by Rebecca J. Allred. Like I said, I'm reading this blind, but and when I mean blind, I mean I'm barely cracking this book open. Aw, thank you, Josie. You're so sweet. Subject Illuminate, what's up? Sorry I got here late. Was asleep for most of the day from exhaustion. All this stuff being added to 2020 has me burnt. I don't blame you, dude. I really, really don't blame you. I mean, yeah, I just been going through a mood lately, all this week. Had a woman that I loved and I lost her because her husband was a dick, and he pretty much told her to block me from all media. And I had to find out from a friend that she wanted nothing to do with me because the story that I got permission from her to do, she gave it to somebody else, which pretty much upset me. Adding to the fact that my son's mother is almost about to give birth to a baby, and her hormonal levels are like through the fucking roof, didn't really help matters with my anxiety. So that's why I've been so pissed off on Twitter lately. So if any of you have felt that I've taken it out on you or anybody in here, I apologize. But there were some things that needed to get it, and just needed to get out there, and I couldn't bottle them up anymore. Thank you, Dustin. I figured since I'm going to be pressed for time, I figured I'd do some live readings from this book. Since, like I said, these stories are over 40 years old and they're pretty much free based. But I wouldn't recommend it just in case, because people tend to get anal, especially with their caretakers. And Jesus Christ, did I really go over an hour? was not expecting to read over an hour. I'm so sorry. Okay. But yeah, I'm glad y'all stuck around to listen to me botch these medical terms, because, yeah, I don't know them from shit. Though it is kind of sad that I know. Fuck. That I know anorexia and fellatio, or whatever. I wouldn't consider fellatio a medical term. I think it would just be called a scientific term or a fancy term for a blowjob. Seriously, Christina? Seriously, Christine? Because I'm looking at my clock, looking at my timer, and I'm like an hour and 6 minutes. Let me look back in the chat. And that's something you need to notice, that whenever I narrate, I do tend to burp. And Cage Misery, my girlfriend at the time, suggested that I leave them in my recordings for bloopers, but I've been too lazy and keep forgetting. Let's see here. Mia sneaks in and sits in the shelves listening. Man, come closer. Give me hugs. You need those mugs. Oh, yeah. Yeah, the hoodies, the shirts, and the mugs are just a sample of what I have in my Teespring store. Like I said, if you want to check out my merch, the link in the description is down below somewhere. I collect stickers. Yeah, Josie, I do. I think I'm in the process of making some stickers right now. I don't remember if they're in the shop right now, but I will check later for you if you want, and then I'll DM you and get back to you. Eric D. Johnson 74, what's up? I hope I didn't put you to sleep. Even if it had been over an hour, nothing to be sorry for. Aw, thank you, Mia. I was putting away clothes when you started, says Christine. East Stevie Seal! Oh damn. Sorry to hear that. Stay strong, dude. That sounds like a ton of bullshit to go through, says Subject Illumin. Yeah. Honestly, it is, but you know what? Sometimes it's hell trying to get to heaven. I don't remember who said that, but if one of y'all can find that out for me, I'll be much appreciative. And yeah, I probably should get some water. I'll be back. Yeah, I forgot. And let me put it on standby. And I'm back. What are you hee about, Mia? If you're thinking of something naughty, I'd like to share. I'd like for you to share. Oh, Josie's now becoming naughty too with her tee. What are you laughing about? I would like to know. Not naughty, naughty, naughty. Alright, well, I'm gonna go through the index and see. Ooh, there's one by Bram Stoker. Alright. I might read the Bystander later. Okay. Oh no, just like to join. Yeah, I can tell you're being naughty. Naughty, naughty. Alright. Alright, this next story in this book is called Dracula's Guest by Bram Stoker. You know, I've always wondered, is it Dracula or Dracula? Because I remember being pronounced Dracula. So, I don't know, we'll just play it by ear. When we started for our drive down the sun, the sun was setting brightly on Munich, and the air was full of the joyousness of early summer. Just as we were about to depart, Herr Delbruck, the the manager de hotel of the Quartiers Stations, and I'm fucking up, where I was staying, came down bareheaded to the carriage and after wishing me a pleasant drive, said to the coachman, still holding his hand on the handle of the carriage door, "Remember, you are back by nightfall. The sky looks bright, but there is a shiver in the north wind that says there may be a setting storm. But I am sure you will not be late." Here he smiled and added, "For you, for you know what night is. Know what night it is." Dracula. Okay, yeah. At least I believe it. Yeah, yeah, I kind of figured that was it. Eh, Dustin? No. Just no. Oh yeah, I gotta give me a present. And there. Alrighty. Where was I? Johann answered with an empathetic "Ja, mein Herr," and touched his hat. Drove off quickly. Anime Atome, what's up? You missed the first story, but I'm on to the second story. I'm gonna start back from Johann answered. Johann answered with an empathetic "Ja, mein Herr," and touching his hat, drove off quickly. When we cleared the town, I said, after signaling to him to stop, "Tell me, Johann, what is tonight?" He crossed himself as he entered laconically. Walpurgis knocked. Then he took his watch, a great old-fashioned German silver thing that as big as a turnip, and looked at it. With his eyebrows gathered together, and a little impatient shrugs of his shoulders. Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm struggling here. And a little impatient shrugs of his shoulders. I realized that this was his way of respectfully protesting against the unnecessary delay, and sank back in the carriage, merely moderating him to proceed, motioning him to proceed. He started off rapidly, as if to make up for lost time. Every now and then, the horses seemed to throw up their heads and sniffed the air suspiciously. On such occasions, I often looked round in alarm. The road was pretty bleak, for we were traversing a sort of high windswept plateau. As we drove, I saw the road that looked but little used. And which seemed to dip through a little winding valley. It looked so inviting that, even at the risk of offering him, I called Johann to stop. And when he had pulled up, I told him I would like to drive down the road. He made all sorts of excuses, and frequently crossed himself as he spoke. This somewhat piqued my curiosity, and so I asked him various questions. He answered feintingly. No giggling. Bad dog. Drink of water. Fuck, I lost my place. Piqued my curiosity, so I asked him various questions. He answered frequently and repeatedly looked at his watch in protest. Finally I said, "Well, Johann, I want to go down this road. I shall not ask you to come unless you like. But tell me, why do you not like to go? That is all I asked." For answer he seemed to throw himself off the box. So quickly did he reach the ground. Then he stretched out his hands appealingly, appealingly to me and implored me not to go. There was just enough of English mixed with the German for me to understand the drift of his talk. He seemed always just about to tell me something, the very idea which eventually frightened him. But each time he pulled himself up, saying, "Raupungus not." I tried to argue with him, but it was different to argue with the man when he did not know his language. When I did not know his language, the advantage certainly rested with him. For although he began to speak in English, for a very crude and broken kind, he always got excited and broke into his native tongue, and every time he did so, he looked at his watch. Then the horses became restless and sniffed the air. And at this he grew pale. At this he grew very pale, and looking around in a frightening way, he suddenly jumped forward, took them by the bridles, and led them on some 20 feet. I followed and asked why he had done this. For an answer he crossed himself, pointed at the spot we had left, and drew his carriage in the direction of the other road, indicating a cross, and said, first in German, then in English, "Bury him. Him what killed themselves." I remember the old custom of burying suicides at crossroads. Ah, I see. A suicide. How interesting. Go away, notification. But for the life of me, I could not make out why the horses were frightened. Whilst we were talking, we heard a sort of sound between a yelp and a bark. It was far away, but the horses got very restless, and it took Johann all this time to quiet them. He was pale and said, "It sounds like a wolf, but yet there are no wolves here." "No," I said, questioning him. "Isn't it long since the wolves were so near the city?" "Long, he answered. "In the spring and summer, but with the snow the wolves have been here not so long." Whilst he was petting the horses and tried to quiet them, dark clouds drifted rapidly across the sky. The sunshine passed away, and a breath of cold wind seemed to drift over us. It was only a breath, however, and more of a warning than a fact. For the sun came out brightly again. Johann looked under his lifted hand at the horizon and said, "The storm of snow. He comes before a long time." Then he looked at his watch again, and straightway holding his reins firmly, for the horses were still pawing the ground restlessly and shaking their heads, he climbed to his box as though the time had come for proceeding on our journey. I felt a little abstinent and did not at once get into the carriage. Tell me, I said, about this place. Fuck off, Notes. Tell me, I said, about this place where the roads lead. Where the road leads. And I pointed down. Again he crossed himself and mumbled a prayer before he answered. It is unholy. What is unholy? I inquired. The village. Then there's a village. No. No. No one lives there hundreds of years. My curiosity was piqued. But you said there was a village. There was. Where is it now? Whereupon he burst out onto a long story of German and English, so mixed up that I could not quite understand exactly what he said. Roughly, I gathered long ago. Hundreds of years, men had died there and been buried in their graves. But the sounds heard under the clay, when the graves were open, men and women were found rosy with life and their mouths red with blood, and so in haste to save their lives. Aye, and their souls. And here he crossed himself. Those who were left fled away to other places, where the living lived and the dead were dead, and not something. He was evidently afraid to speak the last words. As he proceeded with his narration, he grew more and more excited. It seemed as if his imagination had got hold of him, and he ended in a perfect paroxysm of fear, wet-faced, perspiring, trembling, and looking around him as if expecting that some dreadful presence would manifest itself there in the bright sunshine on the open plain. Finally, in an agony of desperation, he cried, "Walpurgis not," and pointed to the carriage for me to get in. All my English blood rose at this, and standing back, I said, "You are afraid, Johann. You are afraid. Go home. I shall return alone. The walk will do me good." The carriage door was open. I took from the seat my oak walking stick, which I always carried on my holiday excursions, and closed the door, pointing back to Munich, and said, "Go home, Johann. Go home, Johann. Walpurgis not doesn't concern Englishmen." The horses were more restive than ever, and Johann was trying to hold them in, while excitedly imploring me not to do anything so foolish. I pitied the poor fellow. He was so deeply in earnest. But all the same, I could not help laughing. His English was quite gone now. In his anxiety, he had forgotten that his only means of making me understand was to talk my language. So he jabbered away in his native German. It began to be a little tedious after giving the direction home. I turned to go down the crossroad into the valley. Where's my water? Ugh. Fuck, I lost my. Oh, there we go. With a despairing gesture, Johann turned his horses towards Munich. I leaned on my stick. And looked after him. He went slowly along the road for a while. Then there came over the crest of the hill a man tall and thin. I could see so much in the distance. When he drew near the horses, they began to jump and kick about, then to scream with terror. Johann could not hold them in. They bolted down the road, running away madly. I watched them out of sight, then looked for the stranger. But I found that he too was gone. With a light heart, I turned down the side road through the deepening valley to which Johann had ejected. There was not the slightest reason that I could see for his objection, and I dare say I tramped for a couple of hours without thinking of time or distance, and certainly without seeing a person or a horse. So far as the place was concerned, it was desolation itself. But I did not notice this particularly till, on turning a bend in the road, I came upon a scattered fringe of wood. Then I recognized that I had been impressed unconsciously by the desolation of the region through which I had passed. I sat down to rest myself and began to look around. It struck me that it was considerably colder than it had been at the commencement of my walk. A sort of sighing sound seemed to be around me with, now and then, high overhead, sort of a muffled roar. Looking upwards, I noticed that great thick clouds were drafting rapidly across the sky from north to south in a great height. There were signs of a coming storm in some lofty stranding of the air. I was a little chilly, and thinking that it was the sitting still after the exercise of walking. I resumed my journey. The ground I passed over was now much more picturesque. There was no striking objects that the eye might single out, and in all there was a charm of beauty. I took little heed of time. It was only when the deepening twilight forced itself upon that I began to think of how I should find my way home. The air was cold, and the drifting of clouds high overhead was more marked. They were accompanied by a sort a far-away rustling sound, though which may seem to come at intervals. That mysterious cry which the driver had said came from a wolf. For a while I hesitated. I had said I would see this, the deserted village. Shit. I had said I would see the deserted village. So on I went, and presently came on a wide stretch of open country, shut in by hills all around. Their sides were covered with trees which spread down to the plain, dotting in clumps the gentler slopes and hollows which showed here and there. I followed my eye. I followed with my eye the winding of the road, and saw that it curved close to one of the densest of these clumps, and was lost behind it. Pardon me. As I looked, there came a cold shiver in the air, and the snow began to fall. I thought of the miles and miles of bleak country I had passed, then hurried on to seek shelter of the wood in front. Darker and darker grew the sky, and faster and heavier fell the snow, till the earth before and around me was a glistening white carpet of the further edge of which was lost in misty vagueness. The road was here but crude, and when on the level its boundaries were not so marked as when it passed through the cuttings. And in a little while I found that I must have strayed from it, for I missed underfoot the hard surface, and my feet sank deeper into the grass and moss. There the wind grew stronger, and blew with every increasing force, till I was fain to run before it. The air became icy cold, and in spite of my exercise, I began to suffer. The snow was now falling so thick and rolling around me in such rapid eddies? Rapid eddies? Wow. Okay. Rapid eddies that I could hardly keep my eyes open. Every now and then the heavens were torn asunder by vivid lightning. Good night. Alright, good night, Dustin. I'm sorry I pissed you off. By vivid lightning, and in the flashes I could see ahead of me a great mass of trees, chiefly yew and cypress, all heavily coated with snow. I was amongst the shelter of the trees, and there, in comparative silence, I could hear the rush of the wind high overhead. Presently, the blackness of the storm had become merged in the darkness of the night. By and by, the storm seemed to be passing away. It now only came in fierce puffs or blasts. At such moments, the weird sound of the wolf appeared to be echoed by many similar sounds around me. Now and again, through the black mass of drifting clouds, came a staggering ray of moonlight. Ah, alright. Well, sorry if I bored you too. Or just read Richie Lullaby stories. Anyways, good night, man. Sleep tight. Yes, Eddie's. I'm sorry, it's been written in this book, but it's spelled like this. I don't know. Let me snap you a picture, Mia, and you can figure it out. Where are you in DM? Oh, I forgot your name's Tarana. Yeah, I've forgotten your name is Tarana in Discord, but I send you the passage, so if you could pronounce it for me, pronounce it correctly for me, that'd be great. I'll just start from this paragraph. As soon as I was soon amongst the shelter of the trees, and there, in comparative silence, I can hear the rush of the wind high overhead. Presently, the blackness of the storm had become merged in the darkness of the night. By and by, the storm seemed to be passing away. It now only came in fierce puffs or blasts. In such moments, the weird sound of the wolf appeared to be echoed by many similar sounds around me. Now and again, through the black mass of drifting cloud, came a straggling ray of moonlight, which lit up the expanse and showed me that I was at the edge of the dense mass of cypress and yew trees. As the snow had increased the fall, I walked out from the shelter and began to investigate more closely. It appeared to me that, amongst the many old foundations I had passed as I passed, there might be still there might be still standing a house in which, through the ruins, I could find some sort of shelter for a while. As I skirted the edge of the copse, I found that a low wall encircled it, and followed this. And following this, I presently found an opening. An opening. Here, the cypresses formed an alley leading up to a square mass of some kind of building. Just as I caught sight of this, however, the drifting clouds obscured the moon, and I passed up the path in darkness. The wind must have grown colder, for I felt myself shiver as I walked. But there was hope of shelter, and I groped my way blindly on. Okay, so I did pronounce it right. Okay. Thank you, Mia. Water. I stopped, for there was a sudden stillness. The storm had passed, and, perhaps in sympathy, with nature's silence. My heart seemed to cease to beat. But this was only momentarily, for suddenly the moonlight broke through the clouds, showing me that I was in the graveyard, and that the square object before me was a great massive tomb of marble, as white as snow, that lay on and all around me. With the moonlight there came a fierce sight of the storm, which appeared to resume its course with a long, low howl, as if many dogs or wolves was. Hang on. Okay, I gotta keep an eye on my OBS as well. Surely. Okay, no more distractions. Continue reading. I was awed and shocked, and I felt the cold precipitously grow perceptibly grow upon me until it seemed to grip me by the heart. Then all the flood of moonlight still fell on the marble tomb. The storm gave further evidence of renewing, as though it were returning on its track. Impelled by some sort of fascination, I approached with the sculpture and to see what it was, and why such by such shit. Fell on the marble tomb. The storm gave further evidence of renewing, as though it were returning on its track. Impelled by some sort of fascination, I approached the sculpture to see what it was, and why such a thing stood alone in such a place. I walked around it and read over the Doric door in German, and I'm going to botch this name, Countess Dollingen of Graz, in Syria, in Styria, sought and found death, 1801. On the top of the tomb, seemingly driven through the solid marble, for the structure was composed for a few vast blocks of stone, was a great iron spike, or stake. On going to the back, I saw, graven in great Russian letters, "The dead travel fast." There was something so weird and uncanny about the whole thing that it gave me a turn and made me feel quite faint. I began to wish, for the first time, that I had taken Johann's advice. Here a thought struck me, which came under almost mysterious circumstances and with a terrible shock. This was Walpurgis Night. Walpurgis Night was when, according to the belief of millions of people, the devil was aboard. When the graves were opened and the dead came forth and walked. When all evil things on earth and air and water held revel. This very place was driver. This very place the driver had specially shunned. This was the depopulated village of centuries ago. This is where the suicide lay. And this was the place where I was alone. Unmanned, shivering with cold in the shroud of snow, with a wild storm gathering again upon me. I gotta stretch my legs. It took all my philosophy. It took all my philosophy, all the religion I had been taught, all my courage not to collapse in in a paroxysm of fright. And now a perfect tornado burst upon me. The ground shook as though thousands of horses thundered across it. And this time the storm bore on its icy wings not snow, but the great hailstones which drove with such violence that they might have come from the Are you serious? Oh yeah, I get it. That they might have come from the thongs of Belleric slingers, hailstorms that beat down leaf and branches and made the shelter of the cypresses of no more avail than through their stems were standing corn. At the first I had rushed to the nearest tree, but I was soon fain to leave it. And seek the only spot that had rushed to the nearest tree. But I was soon. What the fuck? Ah, shit. And seek the only spot that seemed to afford refuge. The deep Doric doorway of the marble tomb. There, crouching against the massive bronze door, I gained a certain amount of protection from the beating of the hailstorms, for now they only drove against me as they ricocheted from the ground and the side of the marble. As I leaned against the door, it moved slightly and opened inwards. The shelter of even a tomb was welcome in the pitiless tempest, and I was about to enter it, when there came a flash of forked lightning that lit up the whole expanse of the heavens. In the instant, as I am a living man, I saw, as my eyes turned into the darkness of the tomb, a beautiful woman with round cheeks and red lips, seemingly sleeping on a bier. As the thunder broke overhead, I was grasped as the hand of a giant and hurled out into the storm. Okay. In the instant, as I am a living man, I saw, as my eyes turned into the darkness, a beautiful woman, and I read that part, seemingly sleeping on the bier. As the thunder broke overhead, I was grasped by the hand of a giant and hurled out into the storm. The whole thing was so sudden that, before I could realize the shock, as mortal as well as physical. My computer's not low. Shut up. I better close Discord. I found the hailstorms bringing me down at the same time. I had a strange dominating feeling that I was not alone. I looked towards the tomb. Just then, then, just then, there came another blinding flash, which seemed to strike the iron stake that surmounted the tomb, and to pour through to the earth, blasting and crumbling the marble, as in a burst of flame. The dead woman rose for a moment of agony, while she was lapped in the flame, and her bitter scream of pain was drowned in the thunder crash. The last thing I heard was the mingling of dreadful sounds, as again I was seized in the giant grasp and dragged away, while the hailstones beat on me, and the air around seemed reverberant with the howling of wolves. The last sight that I remembered was a vague, white, moving mass, as if all the graves around me had sent out the phantoms of their sheeted dead, and that they were closing in on me through the white cloudiness of the driving hail. Gradually there came a sort of vague beginning of consciousness. There, a sense of weariness that was dreadful. For a time I remembered nothing, but slowly my senses returned. My feet seemed positively racked with pain, yet I could not move them. There seemed to be a number that there was an icy feeling at the back of my neck and all down my spine and ear, like my feet were dead yet in torment. But there was in my breast a sense of warmth, which was by comprehension delicious. It was as a nightmare, a physical nightmare. If one may use such an expression, for some heavy weight on my chest made it difficult for me to breathe. This period was similarly seemed to remain a long time, and as it faded away, I must have slept or swooned. Then came a sort of loathing, like the first stage of seasickness, and a wild desire to be free of something. I knew not what. A vast stillness enveloped me, as though all the world were asleep or dead, only broken by the low panting of some animal. By the low panting as of some animal close to me. I felt a warm rasping at my throat. Then came a consciousness of the awful truth, which chilled me to the heart and sent the blood surging up through my brain. Some great animal was lying on me, and now licking my throat. I feared to stir, for some instinct of prudence bade me lie still. But the brute seemed to realize that there was now some change in me, for it raised its head. Through my eyelashes I saw above me the two great flaming eyes of a gigantic wolf. Its sharp white teeth gleamed in the gaping red mouth, and I could feel its hot breath, fierce and acrid upon me. For another spell of time I remembered no more. Then I became conscious for a low growl, followed by a yelp, renewed again and again. This seemingly very far seemingly very far away, I heard a horrora, horrora, as if many voices called in unison. Cautiously, I raised my head and looked in the direction whence the sound came. The cemetery blocked my view. The wolf still continued to yelp in a strange way, and a red glare began to move around the grove of cypresses, as though following the sound. As the voice drew closer, the wolf yelped faster and louder. I feared to make either a sound or motion. Nearer came those from my breast and made for the cemetery. Okay, that was weird. Alright. Made for the cemetery. I saw one of the horsemen, soldiers by their caps and their long military cloaks, raise his carbine and take aim. A companion knocked up his arm, and I heard the ball whiz over my head. He had eventually taken my body for that of the wolf. Another sighted the animal as it snuck away, and a shot followed. Then, at a gallop, the troop rode forward, some towards me, others following the wolf as it disappeared amongst the snow-clad cypresses. As they drew nearer, they tried to move, but was powerless. I tried to move, but I was powerless. Although I could see and hear all that went around me. 2 or 3 of the soldiers jumped from their horses and knelt beside me. One of them raised my head and placed his hand over my heart. "Good news, comrades," he cried. "His heart still beats." Then some brandy was poured down my throat. It put vigor into me, and I was able to open my eyes fully and look around. The lights and shadows were moving among the trees, and I heard men call to one another. They drew together, uttering frightened exclamations, and the lights flashed as the others came pouring out of the cemetery. Fuck me. Where am I lost me? Came pouring out of the cemetery pell-mell, like men possessed. When the further ones came closer to us, those who were around me asked them eagerly, "Well, have you found him?" The reply rang out hurriedly, No. Come away. Quick, quick. There is no place to stay, and on this of all nights." "What was it?" was the question asked in all manner of keys. The answer came variously and all indifferently, as though the men were moved by some common impulse to speak, yet were restrained by some common fear from giving their thoughts. It, indeed, gibbered one. Those wits had apparently given out for a moment. "A wolf, and yet not a wolf," another put in shudderingly. No use trying for him without the sacred bullet, a third remarked in a more ordinary manner. Serve us right for coming out on this night. Truly, we have earned our 1,000 marks. We were the ejaculations on the fourth. There was blood on the broken marble. Another one said after a pause. The lightning never brought that there. And for him, is he safe? Look at his throat. See, comrades, the wolf has been lying on him and keeping his blood warm. The officer looked at my throat and replied, "He is all right. The skin was not pierced." What does it mean? We should never have found him but for the yelping of the wolf. What became of it? Asked the man who was holding up my head and who seemed the least panic-stricken of the party, for his hands were steadily, without tremor. On his sleeve was a chevron of a petty officer. It went home, answered the man, whose long face was pallid, and who actually shook with terror as he glanced around him fearfully. There are graves enough there in which it may lie. Come, comrades, come quickly. Let us leave this cursed spot. The officer raised me to the same posture as he uttered a word of command. Then several men placed me upon a horse. He sprang to the saddle behind me, took me in his arms, gave the word to advance, and turning our faces away from the cypresses, we rode away in swift military order. As yet my tongue refused its office, and I was perforce silent. Must have fallen asleep, for the next thing I remember was finding myself standing up, supported by a soldier on each side of me. It was almost broad daylight. And to the north, a red streak of sunlight was reflected like a path of blood over the waste of snow. The officer was telling the men to say nothing of what they had seen, except that they had found an English stranger guarded by a large dog. Dog. That was no dog, cut in the man who had exhibited such fear. I think I know a wolf when I see it. The young officer answered calmly, I said a dog. Dog, reiterated the other ironically. It was evident that his courage was rising with the sun, and, pointed to me, he said, Look at his throat. Is this the work of a dog, master? Instinctively, I raised my hand to my throat, and as I touched it, I cried out in pain. The men crowded round to see something stooping down from their saddles, and again came the calm voice of a young officer. A dog, as I said. If aught else were said, we should only be laughed at. I was then mounted behind a trooper, and we rode on to the suburbs of Munich. Here we came across a stray carriage into which I was lifted, and it was driven off into the choir's saloons. The young officer accompanied me, whilst a trooper followed with this horse, and the others rode off to the barracks. When we arrived, Herr de Bloch rushed so quickly down the steps to meet me that it was apparent he had been watching within. Taking me by both hands, he solicitously led me in. The officer saluted me and was turning to withdraw when I recognized his purpose and insisted that he should come to my rooms. Come to my rooms? Okay, somebody didn't know how to write when they were recreating this. Over a glass of wine, I warmly thanked him and his brave comrades for saving me. He replied simply that he was more than glad, and that Herr Delbruck had at first taken the steps to make all the searching, partly pleased, at which ambiguous utterance of the maitre d'hotel smiled, while the officer played duty and withdrew. But Herr Delbruck, I inquired, how and why was it that the soldiers searched for me? He shrugged his shoulders, as if the depreciation of his own deed, as he replied, I was so fortunate as to obtain leave from the commander of the regiment in which I serve, to ask for volunteers. But how did you know I was lost? I asked. The driver came hither with the remains of his carriage, which had been upset when the horses ran away. But surely you would not send a search party of soldiers merely on this account. Oh no, he answered. But even before the coachman arrived, I had this telegram from the boyar whose guest you are. And he took from his pocket a telegram which he handed to me, and I read, Bishoris, be careful of my guests. His safety is most precious to me. Should aught happen to him, or if be missed, spare nothing to find him and ensure his safety. He is English and therefore adventurous. There are often dangers from snow and wolves at night. Lose not a moment if you suspect harm of him. I answer your zeal with my fortune. Dracula. As I held the telegram in my hand, the room seemed to whirl around me, and if the attentive Maria de Hotel had not caught me, I think I should have fallen. There was something so strange in all of this, something so weird and impossible to imagine, that there grew on me a sense of my being, in some way, the sport of opposite forces, the mere vague idea of which seemed in a way to paralyze me. I was certain under some form of mysterious protection from a distant country had come, in the very in the very nick of time, a message that took me out of the danger of the snow sleep and the jaws of a wolf. And that was Dracula's Guest. I think I did worse than the last story. I'm so sorry. Goddamn mosquitoes. All right, everybody's still up. I hope I didn't bore everybody away. Let's see what I got from Mia. Aw, how cute. Is that your granddaughter? Subject says it was still a fun read, always open to unique alliterations of the Tale of Dracula. Yeah, I think this was like Stoker's early work, and well, way before the main tale. And yeah, I just saw that in the end of the table of contents, and I was like, ooh, a Dracula tale. I might try that. Yeah, but yeah, that was a bizarre tale and a weird way of telling the dude, homie, you got bit. Why do you think the wolf was licking your neck? Alright. Yeah, that's her picture from school this year, pre-K. Aww. Well, I just, my son's, God damn it, Trixie. Farting again. Well, my son just graduated fifth grade, and he'll be heading into middle school next year. So he's not excited about that at all. Who didn't? Bet it was. I bet that was Renfield. Probably is. Renfield, you asshole. By the way, did you see my sticker comment from earlier? What? Wait, what did you? Sticker comment from where? It's. You talking to me or Mia? Me or Mia? Oh, Mamma Mia. I am not singing that song again. Fuck that. Yeah. Aw, thank you, Mia. And congratulations to your granddaughter. Mia, the undead ballerina. I swear to God, somebody's gonna see you as the undead ballerina, and they're gonna probably make an OC for you. Just you wait. Yes, Mia, you did say Fletcher out. And yeah, I'm gonna get to work on those stickers for you, Josie. Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna just do like paper stickers or die cast or whatever's going on. But I'll definitely let you know when the stickers are made. But seeing as my computer is acting weird, I'm probably gonna have to shut it down for the night. I'd like to thank everybody who showed up and listened to me watch a couple of stories. Maybe next time I'll make sure to make some space so that way all this glitching doesn't happen again. I love you all. I'm gonna end with the usual spiel. Thank you for coming out. And don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and enjoy. And for those who just discovering this, please be sure to whatchamacallit, to follow me on social media, which would be, I'm going to look at my own description, which would be Twitter, Facebook. I need to put in Instagram. And if you want to join me in the Nightmare Running Army, my Discord is also in the link description down below. And if you want to see this channel go a little bit take a step further in quality, you can donate to my Patreon or my PayPal. All proceeds go to better equipment and better quality for all videos, and you'll get a special shout out. And like I said, my Teespring store is in the description, along with the Evil Misery merch store, which probably needs to Hawk too. And thank you all for coming out. And maybe next time I'll do an early stream so that way which VC are you wanting to go to, Josie? Doobie doobie doo. You know what? I'll just go ahead and message you about it, but I probably won't stay long. Oh, okay. We'll hang out there for a little bit, but I'm probably gonna be hitting the sack in a little bit. So, for everybody to come out, thank you for coming in and listening. I guess I'll try to do this at an earlier time. Please stay safe, wash your hands, put your mask on, and remember, I'll be watching you in the shadows.